everyone. A very good evening to you all. My name's Harleen, and I'll be your host for today's session. I hope you're having a great day so far and are now excited and ready for the brand new informative session of the Masterclass series organized by the Institute of Product Leadership. Before we start today's insightful session, I'd like to give you a quick introduction to the Institute. The Institute of Product Leadership is Asia's first business school providing accredited degree programs and certification courses in product management, product leadership, data science, design, strategy, and leadership. The institute has partnered with multiple universities and was founded in 2012 with the singular mission of creating 10,000 product leaders in the country. Ever since, the organization has designed and delivered programs in collaboration with various institutes, universities, and corporates to the senior working professionals to help them make career transitions into product leadership. The Institute has also built and developed a community of over 3,700 plus successful alumni leading the product, data, and design teams across the world. We're also knowledge partners for 250 plus organizations worldwide. You can find out more about the Institute and the programs offered on our website. You can find the link for the same in the chat window. That's a little about the Institute. Moving on to today's session. Today's session is on building high growth B2B SaaS products. Once our speaker for today has finished presenting her insights, we'll open up for questions. You can keep your questions ready and post them on the Q&A section on Zoom. This session is also being streamed live on LinkedIn. So, viewers on LinkedIn, please feel free to post your questions in the comment section and I can share them with the speaker. All right, then, let's get this session started by welcoming and introducing our speaker for today, Ms. Olivia Mukhopadhyay. A true leader in the fintech world, Olivia brings over 12 years of experience in crafting cutting edge fintech products on a global scale. She's a maestro in product strategy, road mapping, user research, data analysis, and agile development. Olivia is committed to continuous professional growth, and her dedication and expertise makes her a remarkable leader in the industry. So pleased to have you join us this evening, Olivia.
Thank you, Harlan. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. Thanks for the very, nice introduction. I'm quite sure I don't live up to all those expectations, but I'm looking forward to a very engaging masterclass today. And I would like to welcome as many questions as possible from the audience over here. Anything product, anything fintech, anything B2B SaaS is not off limits. So please, keep on putting your questions in the chat even while we are going through the masterclass. That will keep it more interactive. And what I'll do is from time to time, every 10 minutes or so, I'll stop and I'll check the chat to see what questions have been posted. With that, Harleen, are we waiting for somebody or should we get started over here?
No, please, you can get started.
Sure, I'll start sharing my screen. And again, for others' benefits, I have a notes because I am an old person. I can't remember everything, unfortunately. So I have a WordPad note. I will keep on, shuffling between the two. So at any point, if you do not see the PPT, please do ping me on the chat.
Yeah, I will let you know.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, everyone. And we'll start the session over here. Do let me know if this is audible and
I can
visible.
see your screen.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Great.
All right. So we will put this in slideshow. I guess Hardin has done a great job introducing me, so I'm not going to introduce myself. I think we will move on. Panel over here. We'll move on to the discussion of, we'll actually jump right in and start with what is B2B SaaS. And here, as you can see, I have put one of my favorite songs, We Didn't Start the Fire. We actually didn't, though B2B SaaS is on fire right now, which means it's a very exciting space to be in. and which also means that both India and globally, we are doing a lot of business, product led business in B2B SaaS. Because the core of B2B SaaS is a SaaS product, which, when sold to the customer, will give the customer a value. And because of that value, the customer will keep coming back. So I want to throw some numbers at you, being a product person. That's what we start with. The Indian SaaS market, the projected revenue is 50 billion USD ARR. Now, the first question that comes to mind is, what is ARR? And for those who do not know, it is the annual recurring revenue. That basically means that you have a customer who is not only paying for the immediate service, but is also going to pay at a later date for the same service. Basically, they're going to keep coming back to you. And I think that is absolute music to any business's ears, because customer retention and customer growth remains one of the most challenging aspects of any business. Now, if you look into this graph, and I'm sure you guys can look at the this thing a little better if you zoom in. So we have companies which have launched in India, which are B2B SaaS companies, which are India first. We also have companies which are global first, which basically just means the India first companies, a lot of them focus on Indian banks, Indian NBFCs, Indian ecosystem, Indian marketing. And the global first companies have provided the same services, but to the rest of the globe. And a lot of these companies work very well in Southeast Asia, in Latin America, though Latin America has its own ecosystem, and most importantly in the US. So let's take a few examples to understand really what we are talking about. What is the scale we are talking about here? So basically, India has identified around 23 unicorns in the B2B SaaS space. Most of these unicorns are either in the India first domain or in the global first domain. Of course, some of them are in the global first domain because they get paid in USD, and that's a much easier route to the unicorn conversion. But what we want to show over here, and one of the reasons that Indian ecosystem has been so excellent at B2B SaaS, and I think it's a little to do with the way Indians are. We value efficiency before anything else. We are a value-driven society, which means that we don't mind spending on something as long as it gives us the value that we are looking for. So SaaS businesses in India, and this is the data that is coming from some of the investors, is that we scale with less capital than a lot of startups in other countries, which means that there are people who continuously work as process and product optimization to ensure that the amount of capital you need to scale is much lesser than other countries, especially first world countries. And then the second one is Indian SaaS companies tend to build additional products faster and earlier in their life cycle. So one of the things, and we will get into this, is one of the discussions we have very often as to what is an MVP and how much of an MVP should we launch at the first go, especially in B2B SaaS, to ensure that we convert the customer and we keep them. So this always remains a challenge, and this always remains an open discussion. Now, talking about some of the companies over here, you will see Razorpay. Everybody knows Razorpay. Razorpay has become ubiquitous in any sort of natch payment. Any loan payment you have, you will go through the Razorpay platform. Any merchant site you go through, most merchant sites go through Razorpay. So no, Razorpay needs no introduction. We have here Credgenics. Credgenics is a debt collection platform which has done very well for itself. And debt collection basically means the reconciliation of credit cards and the reconciliation of loan amounts that are recovered from the customers. We have UB. UB actually is very similar. The platform of UB has several platforms, but one of the platforms is very similar to what we deliver as a charter and lending card. And UB again is basically has positioned themselves as your one-stop solution for all debt processing. So any kind of debt, again, it can be personal debt, it can be supply chain finance, it can be co-lending, which is a different ecosystem. All of this is again supported by UB, and by that I mean MSME lending. When we look at the global first companies, the one that I'm going to talk about a little is CleverTap. CleverTap actually has been a success story for quite some time. And it is a marketing, automation company. They are now using beautiful AI enable to ensure that the marketing automation goes out correctly. And a lot of the messaging, automation of messaging is also done by them. And CleverTap has a very high success ratio. In fact, it is on the way to become a unicorn as we speak. And then the last one that I would like to sort of touch upon is Commerce IQ. Commerce IQ is a very interesting company. Again, on its way to be a unicorn, Commerce IQ basically deals with automation of basically they use AI and ML. What they do is they help certain merchants make their businesses better on retail platforms, which means that if I am a merchant and I'm on Amazon, and if I integrate with Commerce IQ, what they will do is on a daily basis, they will understand my entire sales cycle. They will understand certain variables and benchmarks of the same platform. They will also collect data to understand how my competitors are doing or how somebody selling similar products are doing. And every single day at the end of the day, they will generate an insight to tell me where I'm going wrong and how I can do my business better. So obviously, I mean, again, for any small business, that is amazing. Now, before we move on from the slide, there is only one thing I want to call out here. For a lot of the India first companies, they are now focusing on the SMB or the MSME sector, as we call it in India, the small and medium business sector. And the reason for this is the SMB sector in India is completely untouched for a lot of, especially when it comes to financial inclusion and credit. And because it is untouched, it's a greenfield opportunity for a lot of these companies to build digital solutions for these consumers, because these consumers, A, are underserved, B, they understand digital. There is, I think, some misconception in the market that SMB consumers don't understand digital, but they do actually. And they understand it very well. And they also understand the power of digital, which is that you can do a lot of upfront processing or a lot of upfront scaling with these customers if you put them through a digital channel vis-a-vis manual channels, which are error prone and definitely time consuming. So with that understanding of the B2B SaaS and India first and global first, we will move on into what we want to talk about today as product managers. I will take a little bit of time here. I'm sorry, there's a chat. Let me just check it. Oh, perfect. So I'll take a little bit of time here because this is something that is very close to my heart. And whenever I talk to a cohort of product managers or product enthusiasts, this is something that I always go through because we believe that as product leaders, it is part of our job to ensure that, the next generation of great product managers are coached and that there is a symbiotic learning where we also learn from them on how they're doing certain things. And they also learn from us as to what are the observed best practices in the market. Now, there is a debate of good versus great, but any great product manager champions four things. First is customer obsession. A lot of people talk about customer obsession, and especially I've heard this in the B2B markets or the B2B SaaS markets. Product managers who work in B2B SaaS generally believe that customer obsession is the job of the sales team, which is as far from the truth as it can be. And the reason for this is because when you look at all B2B SaaS products, what are they actually trying to do? They're actually trying to deliver value for an end consumer. That end consumer is generally an individual like you and me. There are very few B2B companies which use different SaaS products to deliver value to another B2B company or another business. Most of these most of the B2B SaaS companies, the people they sell to are businesses, but those businesses are ultimately trying to serve some end consumer. So then when I mean customer obsession, I don't only mean customer obsession with the business you're serving. I also mean customer obsession of the customer they are serving. So it's a B2B2C kind of scenario where not only the business is my customer, but the business's customer is also my customer. And this customer obsession is extremely important, and there is a huge gap in the market today of most product managers and this with this customer obsession piece. Why does that happen? Because most people don't understand that until and unless I go and talk to the end consumer, I will not have the data points which will actually solve the problem or which will give me the next product discovery. And this is one of the reasons why in B2B product discovery is a little slow compared to B2C, where since you directly go to the consumer, you always know that the feedback, you ride and die with the customer. If the customer is not using your product, the feedback is not coming, you really cannot move ahead. But in B2B, the structure is a little different, and we'll go into that discussion. Second thing is business growth. Again, for a lot of junior product managers, we see that they believe that they are given a set of parameters or a product roadmap and they have to execute that. But they don't question that what is it serving? Because until unless you ask that question, that what is it that I'm trying to do? What is it serving? You may build the most fantastic product in the world, but if nobody uses it, it's of no use. That is the bottom line. So when you go to business growth, and by business growth, again, I mean that obviously product managers, by the virtue of where we come from, because we come from very different backgrounds, may not always have the business focus primary in mind. But this is something that is a learned behavior, and that is very important to have a learned behavior here. So in business growth, you basically have to talk to your business stakeholders, especially if you're somebody who hasn't run a business or doesn't have that acumen, and try to understand from them what KPIs are important to them. Why are they chasing those KPIs? And the third degree question, which again many people forget to ask, is why this KPI and not something else? So that brings the discussion to output versus outcome. Now, a lot of product teams, even today, world over, deliver output. But because they deliver output, they fail to capture the customer, or they fail to capture the market, or they fail to capture, the imagination of the next generation. When you deliver outcome, the outcome itself will bring the customer back to you. So this is a full process. And frankly, I mean, in your product life journey, there will be at least only 2 or 3 times where you will deliver an outcome that will change, the world. But those outcomes are extremely important, and the outcome is tied to that business growth. So till you understand your industry very well, till you understand how the business in that industry works, the trends work, why your customer does certain things a certain way, you will not be able to deliver that outcome. Third one, of course, goes without saying, data-driven decision making and technical acumen. For a lot of smaller companies, there is still a little bit of problem in this area, because I have heard conversations where product managers say that technicality is a part of the engineers or the engineering manager's job, which it is. They are the experts, they're the subject matter experts. But it is also your job to understand what they're saying. Because until and unless you understand, you cannot really make product trade-offs. So if somebody says that, hey, I can do this for you in 5 days, but it will make the service really slow for the customer, you should have enough technical acumen to challenge that and say, I don't want it to be slow for my customer. What else can we do? Second is data-driven decision making. This goes without saying. Fortunately, Indian cohorts are very good at data-driven decision making. We do take a lot of data. But again, to what extent do you take the data? So let me give an example. Let's say you are going for a customer interview, right? And you have a slew of data points with you. You basically ask the customer a bunch of questions. The customer says a bunch of things. You take, notes of what he's saying, and you come back. If you leave that organization 2 years down the line, will anybody have a recollection of this interview? The answer is no. Because you have not put that data back in the system. You have not put the insights back in the system. You haven't captured it in a way which makes it robust and usable later. So data-driven decision making not only means that you have the data, it also means that you persist the data so that that data then later becomes the bedrock on which you take further decisions, or your organization is capable of taking further decisions. Number 4 is leadership. Now, I've again heard many younger PMs come up and say that, hey, I'm not empowered enough to take a decision. I want to work a certain way, but my boss is not agreeing. The CEO is not, agreeing. All fair points. However, this is something that again is a learned behavior, and that is something you need to learn. Planning, negotiation, prioritization, and the fourth thing we talked about, outcome versus output. So when you structure your thought process in such a way that you become outcome driven, that you become customer obsessed, that you talk to your business stakeholders almost daily, it is but imperative that your boss, your CEO will take notice. And once they take notice, then your chances of having their ear for the planning and negotiation piece, where you say that, hey, if we don't do it this way, but this way, then I think we will deliver better outcomes, will be easier. Um, so the last question that I want to leave you with, and this I think we can discuss more in the Q&A if somebody's interested, is do you work in a feature factory or an empower team? And the difference between those two is very simple. In a feature factory, a PM is given a laundry list of product roadmap features and says, go and execute, figure out how to do it. In an empower team, you have your engineering, data science counterparts sitting with you, business counterparts sitting with you, and trying to figure out why a problem is worth solving and then how to solve it. So I'll leave it at that. I don't think any questions have come so far in the chat. So I would request you guys to, yeah, I would request you guys to put in your questions. So I think the next thing we are talking about. Sorry, Harleen, any observations?
Oh no, sorry, I was just my bad.
No worries.
We do have a question in the chat from Rohit
Sure.
and
I'll check.
Pankaj.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. How much salary? Okay. Interesting. Okay. Uh, I don't think any critical point was missed, so that should be okay. How much salary do you expect in 10 years of experience in product management? Depends on how good you are. Really, it really depends on that.
Very
Depends on
true.
what your experiences are, uh, how you have shown, continuous improvement in your career, how you have shown diverse products and projects you have worked with. It depends on that. It can range anywhere between 12 lakhs to 60 lakhs. It's a huge range. Okay. Pankaj, how do we manage the end users in case of B2B client? I'll come to that. That's a good question. Ashima has asked, do we need to be functional expert for finance industry or fintech? Good questions both. All right. So Pankaj, let's take yours first. How do you manage the end-to-end users in case of B2B clients? You don't manage them per se, because as I said, in your case, your end user is basically a business or a business team, but their end user is somebody who is an individual like you or me. So when you define B2B client, you have to define it at both levels. You have to say that, hey, I am going to talk to my users, who is basically the user of my product, the business itself. I'm also going to talk to their users and see whatever they are enabling for these users, where is the gap over there. So this basically brings you to managing the end users basically means that you talk to those users, you take inputs from them, you take inputs in a manner that you can record and keep, and then you use that in your product discovery process. Now, very briefly, what is the product discovery process? The product discovery process is nothing more than us understanding what to build next, what will actually make sense in the market, and what do people want to pay for, right? So if you have a follow-up question on that, Pankaj, please put it over here. I think that should suffice for the time being. And do we need to be functional expert for finance industry or fintech? So Asima, fintech is finance and technology. So if you are an expert for the fintech industry, you have to be an expert in the finance industry. But by being an expert in the finance industry, I don't expect you to write, financial models. That is not the expectation. The expectation is to understand how the finance industry works, which means that the particular product you're selling in the entire value chain of the finance industry, where does that product fit? And if that product fits in that particular place, then who are the users of that product? What are the actions they're going to do with that product? And if they do those actions with their product, why is it that they will love your product more than anybody else's? So that is what you need to be an expert in. I think we have 5 new messages. We'll just go down, take them quickly. Mm, yeah. For creating user journeys. Yeah, we'll come to user journeys, Asima. We'll take you through that. Shwetaraj, to everyone, how involved are B2B PMs in pricing? Okay. And how does it differ in between global versus local focus SaaS? Okay. So that, Shwasta, is basically that's a function of how big your company is. So if you're working for a company where you're just starting off, you're a startup, right? And you're selling a B2B SaaS, like one example would be a lot of RegTech startups today. They just have like one PM and one CEO. That's how they run the company. And of course, a bunch of engineers. So in that case, I think you would be pretty involved in the pricing, and you would want to then benchmark it against the value you're trying to provide, and of course, comparative benchmarking. So that's one way to do it. How does it differ in global and local markets? I think in global markets, generally you have a bigger team because the execution is focused on, capturing as many clients as possible. There you will generally have a CBO or a chief business officer or a RevOps head who will do that pricing on your behalf. But if you're looking at a local focused market and if you're a small team, then the PMs do get involved in the pricing scenarios. Okay. What else? Okay, cool. I think we can move on next to the landscape. So I wanted to do a quick comparison, though I think almost everybody already knows this about the within the B2B and the B2C, products. And by area of influence, see, there are multiple things you can consider in an area of influence. I have given you the most basic things that we absolutely have to consider. The first one is buyer versus influencers. So this is a no-brainer because as we understand in B2C, we sell directly to the consumer, which means the consumer in most cases is the buyer. Exception is, toys for kids. So there the kid is definitely the influencer, but the buyer is the parent. So that is the difference. However, in a B2B setup, your influencer would be a mid-level management, a CPO, a senior VP of product, senior, technology person. And the buyer would be the CXO or the vertical head. Again, this really depends on the size of the company. So I'll take an example. If you are working for, let's say, a company of our size, lending card size, and lending card is not a very small company, then that decision is generally taken by the CPO and the CTO. So they take a joint decision of buying something. Similarly, if I extrapolate that to a bank for, let's say, JPMC, JPMC is a huge corporation. There, each business head or each vertical head will take a call whether they want to buy a certain B2B SaaS product or not. And that is why in a lot of banks and in a lot of very big organizations where the buying is done like this, there is no centralized team for buying. You will see a lot of departments use different softwares for doing the same thing. It's a very uh, unorganized system or a very not efficient system in that way. The second is the industry saturation. Now, for a lot of B2C products, apps, mobile apps, web apps, whatever you can think about, you will see that the saturation in the market is quite high because the cost to entry is quite low. So let's say I want to start a dating app. Uh, there is literally nothing stopping me from building an app, putting it in Play Store, and then trying to get a bunch of users through Instagram and Facebook, through targeted marketing. Of course, I need to have some money, but there's no barrier to entry per se. But in a similar manner, if I want to build, let's say, a credit card, digital credit card solution, but the credit card itself is digital, I will need to have good, technical acumen. I will also need to focus very hard on building that product for 6 to 12 months before I even go to the market. Now, because of that, there are certain parts of the industry, and by industry, I'm not only talking fintech, I'm talking across the board. So there is hospital, which is basically hospital and pharmacy, which is health tech. There is insurance tech. Fintech definitely is one area. Then there are areas where we do, marketing and Salesforce optimization. In all of these areas, there are certain areas which are over, overserved, and there are certain areas which are completely underserved. Which brings me back to the point we were discussing in the first slide, that for a lot of SMB customers, they're completely underserved, especially when it comes to financial inclusion, which is why you will now see a lot of players rushing into that market to fill up the void. And the good news is it's, I think, $100 trillion industry and growing at a 30% CAGR year on year. So with as many players as they want to enter the market, we will still have enough portion of the pie to feed everybody, given that we keep on discovering niche and niche markets, that all of us don't serve the same customer. I think one example, I'm sure a lot of you already work, you're working professionals. One example would be the amount of calls you get for loans and credit cards. See, if you are one customer and you're getting five calls for five loans, it really doesn't serve any purpose for you. But for an SMB customer, I mean, he can go to five banks and not even get one loan. So that is where the underserved market is. And that is what we need to solve. Subscription type. Now, subscription type is there are different subscription types I've called out over here for a B2C product. For a B2B product, generally it's a subscription that locks you in for a certain period of time, which is X years. So, an X can be defined, I mean, it really can be anything. I have even seen contracts for 6 months, which is frankly a little shocking because generally it used to be a lock in of 2 years. But I think what has happened over time is now here is a little bit of a nuance. Generally, in the B2B market, the switching cost is very high, which means that if I implement, let's say, a CRM, customer relationship management software, or if I implement an HCM, HR management software, it will take me quite some time to A, get used to it, B, use it, pay the subscription for it. And then 5 years later, if I change it, there has to be, a lot of points going against it for me, A, to even want to change it. But even if I want to change it, it is getting that integration out of my system, reintegrating a new software, training people, doing the change management. It's a huge effort. So a lot of organizations don't want to go through that hassle. Hence the B2B cycle. The conversion cycle is also high, by the way. So to bring a B2B customer to you, first you have to, let's say, spend 6 to 8 months on product development. Then you have to do the product-led growth, which is product-led growth is a strategy for sales. You do that and it takes 1 to 2 quarters to even convert your first customer. So it's almost a year and a half of cycle and cash burn you're looking at. But once you do that, once you have your first customer, once you have your second customer, once you have your third customer, then incrementally the benefits keep coming on. As we showed in the first slide, the ARR keeps on increasing because these same customers will keep on buying the subscription again and again. Moving on. So first launch expectations. And again, this is a little bit of a controversial topic, but this is my observation. So in the B2C launches, you have to give the customer the minimum lovable product, not the minimum viable product. What is a lovable product? A lovable product is something that is the experience for the customer is so good that they want to come back to it again and again. So I don't know if any of you remember when Nika was launched as an app. That's quite some time back. Or even when Uber was launched, right, in India, and when Ola was launched. From day one, if you remember Uber and Ola UI UX, it was quite at par with what they have today. Of course, there have been improvements over time, but the basic functionality, your functionality of booking a cab, your functionality of booking a ride later, your functionality of tracking the ride, all of those remain the same. So that is the minimum lovable product, which if you give a customer, the customer will come to you again. It's a pull versus push. However, in B2B setup, the product that you launch is the minimum viable product, which can be different than the minimum lovable product. A minimum viable product is one which is stable from day one, which will do all the functions as expected 99% of the time from day one, which will, if there are regulatory and compliance aspects, take care of it from day one, which will have data security from day one. So basically, the minimum viable product is a heavier product than the minimum lovable product. And again, it completely depends on market, what you're launching, who's the customer, what you're trying to serve, all of that considered. But minimum viable product is something that if you don't build for a B2B SaaS partner, the partner will simply not buy it. To the extent that if the next available option, let's say, is 10 times, 20 times, 100 times more expensive than your product, even then the customer in this case will go and buy that product. Why? Because what businesses care about most is stability and serving their own customers. So if I have to pay 10 times today to serve customers, I will work harder at customer acquisition and make that money. But if I have an unstable system and my customers are leaving me, that is something I cannot make up for. So whenever we sell to a business, the product has to be minimum viable. Partner requirements. So in an ecosystem, generally when you launch products, again, there are exceptions. Most B2C products are generally direct to consumer. We sell directly to the consumer. In B2B, we have seen that in certain cases, you need channel partners. Like when we launched our product, right? And we wanted to drive a lot of traffic into this product. We actually had to partner with Pesa Bazaar and like run very dedicated campaigns for the traffic to be directed to our platforms. So you may require channel partners. Completely depends on what customer you're trying to acquire. But that customer acquisition may require channel partners. You may even require channel partners to launch your product. So I don't know how many of you remember this, but back in the day, Microsoft used to come up with CDs for their Word, Excel, all of this. And how you would get introduced to that is you would go to a computer shop with your computer, with your laptop, try to, get XYZ installed. And then the person sitting there on the counter would tell you that, why don't you use Microsoft Word? It's actually good. And that is how you would get converted. That right there is a channel partner because that person is also getting some money out of it. A direct sales agent would be, on the contrary, somebody who would come to your doorstep to sell this. So that is the difference in case somebody wanted to know. So we'll move on. And so now that we have talked about the landscape, we will actually go into the B2B products and the customer journey. I think somebody had a question for customer journey. So this is a generalized customer journey as to what happens, what is the, general, how do we handle customer journey in a B2B product space. Now, generally, a B2B company will have a discovery and pre-sales team. Now, discovery and pre-sales team can be very small. It can be just one person cold calling people and asking them to buy their software. It can also be a sizable team across geographies and across locations, depending on what you're selling. And of course, how much, capital you have. So the general process of a B2B conversion is that let's say there is a business and the business wants to buy a certain software or wants to buy a certain product or even a service or a platform for its internal use or to serve its customers. So it can even be a CRM. A CRM is something you use to for sales conversion and to convert more customers. So in that case, the company will come up with a RFP. RFP is a request for proposal, where they will ask different B2B SaaS companies or different product companies to come and demo their products. And once this product is demoed, then their internal teams will take a call as to which B2B SaaS product they want to buy. This depends on a lot of factors, including environmental factors, including comfort with the team, including comfort with the technology, including how well that particular product or technology gels into your ecosystem. And of course, cost. Cost is definitely a big consideration. Uh, so the first process is discovery and pre-sales, where the pre-sales team generally goes out in the market chasing these RFPs, or they even take cold calls with certain customers to try and understand what their product needs are in a certain space. Then you have the customer POC and deal finalization. So this is, of course, the most important stage. In the customer POC stage, we pretty much take a walkthrough of the MVP. So let's say I am looking at a product which will make my credit underwriter's life easier. So when I bring that credit underwriter on the table, he should be able to manage 80 to 90% of his activities in the POC itself. So again, we are coming back to then what is minimum viable product, right? So the viability basically is that this guy should be able to do 80% of his work right there in the POC. And 20% can be given to that company as a extra implementation feature. So this is the second thing. Once the POC goes well, generally there is a deal finalization, which happens. While the deal finalization happens, there is an implementation and go live process which is started. Now, in most B2B SaaS product companies, you have two teams which work in parallel. One is the product team, which builds the product, which builds the features, which does the market survey to try and understand what the customers are using, what is the actual research benchmarks, all of this, and try to build a product that the market actually will buy. But parallelly, you have an equally important team, the implementation team, which actually goes to the customer's premises, implements this software or this product, takes real-time customer feedback and passes it back to the product. Now, why I'm calling this out is because I think in a lot of organizations, there is a mistaken hierarchy where people somehow think that the product team is better than the implementation team. That is simply not the case. The implementation team can be your biggest friend, your greatest insight generator, your next product discovery guy, the person who can actually tell you where there is a logical flaw or a bug in your product, if we listen to them carefully. But this gap in communication in most companies is huge enough that we do not get that feedback from the implementation team, or even if we do, the product team refuses to put it back into the feature program, which is basically, trust me, a harikiri, because if you are doing that, then you will literally end up building a product which is a dinosaur. Nobody will use it after 2 years. So in the implementation, what the implementation team tries to figure out is they do the entire process mapping. So whatever user activities you have, that process mapping is done end to end. Then gaps are identified. The gap identification is the most important thing, because gap identification will actually tell you as to how much your product will solve for the customer's use case and where are the gaps. So whatever those gaps are. Now, this is where the fun part is. If you have only one customer or one company which you are trying to sell to, then as a product person, it becomes a really hard challenge for you to understand whether to build this gap into the feature, or it's just an implementation thing that an implementation engineer will build specifically for the customer, basically a custom feature. Why this is difficult is because obviously you don't have enough data. And for a lot of B2B SaaS people, again, the market analysis that is done till the time you are actually in the implementation phase, you don't really understand the business that well. Which is why, again, you will see a lot of B2B SaaS PMs or product leaders come with previous experience. I mean, that is looked at while hiring those people because of this reason. Because it is very difficult for me to explain to somebody how a financial process works if they at least do not have the exposure to a bank backend or a bank middle office, how it works and what are the data points over there. Now, once the gap identification is done, then you do the fixes. And I have put the feature discovery over here because this is a genuinely good way for you to understand the feature discovery. You can put everything in your feature backlog at this point. When you go for implementation to the next customer, again, take a feedback from your implementation team. If you're seeing that this feature, there are 4 or 5 features which keep repeating across customers, then you definitely need to know that those are P0 features which you need to build into your product, your customer and the market are expecting it. Even if you don't think that's a part of the MVP or should be a part of the MVP, that is what the market expectation is. So this is a very good way. And I think B2B SaaS PMs have a little bit of leeway in that sense, because obviously an implementation can go on from 6 to 9 months. So we have some time for us to understand and rationalize what features to build and do more product discovery and build newer features to make our product more and more relevant to the markets we're trying to serve. Number 4, very painful process, training and change management. Trust me, I think enough product managers don't talk about it because, again, there are different teams which run it. But when you go at a product, like even at an SPM level, when you're looking at, middle management leadership levels of product, basically everything is your business. The product till the day it hits the market, till the time you make money, it is definitely your business to understand what is going on. You might be able to influence it. You might not have direct control over it, which is fair. But training and change management, again, because it's a people intensive process where people are transferring from one system to another system. Some of them have resistance. Some of them don't understand why they're changing. Some of them want to use the old system. Some of them want to do it manually. So until and unless, and this is the crux of this whole matter, like what is the point of discussing this? The point of discussing this is this. Until and unless you build a product which calls out the value to the end consumer very clearly, where the end consumer can see, hey, it saves my time, it saves my headache, it saves my effort, you are not going to convert a customer. But that again means that you will actually end up building a little bit more than exactly what's necessary. Like for me to do my day-to-day work, let's say 5 steps are necessary. But you will have to build for 2 extra features or 7 features, just so that it becomes so appealing to the customer. That the customer says that, hey, I really don't think how I did my work before this thing came along, right? I think case in point would be like a lot of people who use Asana say this, that I don't know how we managed backlogs before Asana came along. So that is the kind of feedback you need from your customer, because without that, that conversion is not happening. No matter how much training, how much change management you go through, it's not going to happen. Post go live SLA tracking and bug fixes. Again, this is done generally by the engineering team. But there is this SLA tracking and bug fixes is again another opportunity for product managers to step in to try and understand that why is our product buggy? Is it because we built something that is technically a little less feasible than it should be? Or is it because that when we were conceptualizing the product, certain concepts were not clear to us? And that is why we built wrong requirements into the product in the first place. So do not miss this opportunity. I've seen a lot of good product managers miss point number 5. Point number 6, new feature addition and version change management. This again becomes a very important thing to talk about because see, for a lot of softwares, and I will take the example of, let's say, Salesforce. Salesforce, I think, is in 6th or 7th version right now, or maybe 12th. I don't even remember. But then let's say I implemented Salesforce and this newer versions are coming up with better stability, better reliability, but obviously the cost is increasing, right? I am a small to medium enterprise. Whatever version I have of Salesforce, my CRM goes fine. I don't see a lot of reason to pay Salesforce a lot of extra money and then upgrade to this newer version. But then you, as the B2B SaaS PM, you have to understand that at some point you will sunset your product. You cannot continue Salesforce version 1 forever. Then what do you do with these customers who don't want to change? That's a hard call that you and your business need to take. Of course, I mean, there is a period till which you will support these customers. You will support, the nuances on the different versions. But increasingly over time, if you do the math, you will see that it becomes costlier for you to keep these customers than to move on to other customers and generate more revenue. But again, I mean, product managers also are a stand-in for your end user, for your customer. So you need to take the very hard call of saying that, hey, I still want to support these customers because of XYZ reasons. What those reasons are, it's best known to the product manager who is working in that team at that time. So this is basically the customer journey lifecycle. I think we have talked about product strategy, product discovery. We have talked about how you take certain decisions and where the communication gaps are while discussing this process. I will stop. If there are any questions, please put it in the chat because I think we discussed a lot of information right now. And I think there are some things in the Q&A as well. Sorry, Harleen, I'm having a little difficulty with the mouse. Is it possible for you to read out the Q&As?
Yes, I can do that.
Yeah.
We have Chetna who's asked, in a B2B setup, how do we improvise with customer reach out or push for it?
Okay.
Uh, she's asking for tips as she has worked with 4 such firms and hasn't gotten a direct customer interaction.
Okay. Sure. So I think Chetana, so she's saying that she did not have a direct customer interaction, right?
Yes, she
Right.
hasn't.
So Chetana, I will ask you the question of what stopped you from picking up the phone and talking to the customer, and how frequently you spoke to your sales and your management teams, which generally talk to the customer directly. Because again, see, like we discussed in slide 1, a lot of this depends on what initiative you take by yourself. I mean, I'm very sure there will be systems where you will be actively encouraged not to do it. But if you want to be a good PM and if you want to be a great PM, that is where you have to stick out your neck, take the risk, and talk to the customer. I'm thinking that for whatever reason you have not been able to, you haven't had that access. So to stop customer reach out, frankly, without interviewing the customer and seeing what their pain points are, without doing a connected call, like a video call, like we are doing right now, and having the customer take you through the journey, having the customer use it in front of you, without running very small focus groups with 1 or 2 customers. You can even go to their office, sit with them, and just have a conversation with them. You will find it very difficult to control customer reach out because customers leave when they're A, uninterested, or B, unhappy. If they're uninterested, it just might be that the product that you had built was not for them, which leaves you open for a space for product discovery. And you might do the product discovery and figure out that, hey, these are customers I don't want to serve after all. That might happen. But if the customers are unhappy, then it means there's definitely something which is a gap in the product or which they're filling with something else. And that will grow into other customers. So customer return is a tricky thing to handle if you don't talk to the customer. Harleen, can we go to the next one?
Yes, of course. We have Karthik who has asked how to gather right data when interacting with B2B customers, especially in some of the decision making and prioritization related activities.
Hmm. So, Karthik, first of all, take prioritization out of the window. Prioritization is something we do when we have all the data points. Okay. We don't prioritize before we have data points. So, you cannot prioritize while you're talking to the customer. But what you can do is, and this is where I will come back to output versus outcome. You need to understand what is the outcome you're trying to drive. Now, let me take an example because it's easier to understand. So, let's say your outcome is that the customer will become so obsessed with my product that he'll keep on using it repeatedly. So that's a different, that is the outcome you want to model for. That is very different than saying, hey, the customer is not using all the features correctly. So the outcome for the customer would be a more comprehensive understanding of the system. So these are very different outcomes, and you have to model towards the outcome. Now, how will you model towards the outcome? You will model towards the outcome by knowing what your pain points are. So the first thing you need to do is send out a customer survey to all of your customers and try to understand here, where are you facing a difficulty. If you were to tell about my product to your friend, or in that case, let's say you are a salesperson in a different company, and how likely would you be if I had another customer, how likely would you be to give me a good NPS score? And if the answer is no, or if it is agnostic, then it means something is going wrong. The customer wow factor or the customer hook is not there. So in that case, when you sit down with the customer, and again, by customer, I mean, of course, your end user, the end user of the product, and your middleman, which is the actual company you're selling to. When you sit down with both, have a series of outcomes that you want in your mind first before you even start asking your first question. That is the easiest way to sort of, jot down what questions you need to ask them. Uh, and we can discuss more about that in the subsequent conversations.
Okay, great. We next have Shadank, who's asked how has Gen AI, specifically, not other AI, affected your current company's business, either top line or bottom line, and product function?
It hasn't at all. We have no use case.
Okay.
We are not
Uh,
saying we won't have a use case in the future. We are saying currently it doesn't affect us.
okay, all right. He's also asked, how does a non MBA learn business?
There are different, places. I think Institute of Product Leadership itself has shorter courses about strategy and leadership, where you can very well go through that course and it gives you the same understanding that an MBA has, because frankly, that is what is taught in an MBA as well. Of course, I mean, it's a more extensive version of that. But courses like this, courses in Coursera, courses in edX, courses in Udemy, find those and keep on going through those. But nothing beats real life learning. If you're already working, then my suggestion would be go sit down with your business guy and try and understand what he does in a day and why he does things the way he does them. Why doesn't he do it any other? Even better, if you have access to your CBO, the chief business officer, or a product leader, ask them for a mentorship. Sit with them and try to understand your business and industry. Where is it going? Why are they chasing certain markets or certain outcomes and not other markets or other outcomes? What are the gaps they are seeing in the market? That is the best way to learn business more than anything else.
Thanks for that, Olivia. Next, we have Abhinaya Gomati, who has firstly said, at last someone spoke something good about implementation team, and then has gone on to ask, will B2B SaaS implementation team thrive or will PLG take over?
So B2B SaaS implementation is a complement to PLG, right? The more PLG you have, the more you will need implementation teams to go inside and do the implementation. PLG can only bring your customer to the door. But if you don't do a good implementation, then the customer is not staying, neither is he paying. So obviously, implementation teams will thrive in India, and implementation teams will keep thriving till we have, the more ARR we have, the more customers we keep on getting through the door, and the more we sell to them. And case in point is Adobe. Adobe has fantastic products. Adobe also has fantastic implementation teams. Oracle, biggest example. Oracle has fantastic products. Oracle also has fantastic implementation teams. AWS, same example. Salesforce. Salesforce doesn't even do its own implementation. There are so many companies which their core business is just implementing Salesforce for other companies. So yes, implementation teams have a huge future. And I would actually, you know, I agree with you, Abhinay. I would actually want to see more implementation team feedback into the product and the product becoming better and better over time. Okay, anything else? Let's go into
We
the
have a
charts.
few
Yeah,
more questions, but maybe we can come back to them later. As
sure. I just wanted to cover this. Oh, wow. Okay.
yeah, of course.
Okay. What sector is slated to go in fintech? Lending for sure. Cards, though RBI has come down a little heavily on cards for the time being. Um, Cards is a subset of lending and payments. Where we are also seeing a little bit of upsurge, and I think it will get better and better, is wealth tech. Lot of There are a lot of niche wealth tech companies in India. So you don't see like Zerodha and all are brokerage firms. They're not exactly wealth tech. They're not exactly where you can manage your wealth end to end, like maybe a chase.com can do. So chase.com has a platform which I don't know if any of you have seen it, but it's quite extensive. You can use it to manage, you can do as intensive as day trading to as non-intensive as investing in certain mutual funds and just keeping it that way. And that has an analytics engine which runs in the background, keeps on putting suggestions and keeps on rebalancing your portfolio. Very beautiful data, AI driven software initiation. So I think that will come in. But wealth tech, the problem in India is that wealth tech by itself is a market where a lot of Indians are still not comfortable going into it. So we don't know. We have not seen a lot of investment in wealth tech going in as of now. Okay. In a B2B early stage, how to get access to the end customer? True. How to determine the willingness to pay for B2B early stage startup? Any key techniques? Product market fit, right? Now, the point is that what is it that you're trying to sell? In an early stage startup, if your CEO has done his job properly, or even if you're the product manager, if you're running that company, what you need to understand is the product market fit and what the willingness to pay should follow. So let's say one thing which I often say. It is never a very happy journey for the first entrant in any market. Okay. There are generally no exceptions to this. I think everybody knows the IBM story, where IBM had a bunch of innovations that were just sitting in its Bell Labs, and at different times, people from Apple and Microsoft went over there, took those innovations, entered the market, and did amazing business. So a lot of it depends on what you're trying to sell. So I'll take an example of RegTech, because RegTech, a lot of startups we are seeing are now really early stage. RegTech is something that is very important. It's necessary because a lot of regulations are coming. Regulations are changing day to day. People don't have understanding, and they would want to build those interventions into their existing products and softwares. So a RegTech B2B SaaS makes sense. But what is the willingness to pay for the same? It is very difficult to determine in a greenfield market. The only benchmark we have is generally against similar products in insurtech or fintech. So if I say that, hey, let's say I am spending, so the pitch goes like this: that if you do not do this, and I'm talking about a US context, by the way, if you do not do this, or if you do not implement this regulation correctly, or if you do not do GDPR correctly, then you are going to pay, let's say, $300 billion in fine. So I am just asking you 10% of that to save you from all that headache. That is how the pitch generally goes, because the benchmarking currently is very difficult to sort of settle. But as I said, you can read up a little bit on pricing strategy, competitor analysis, adjacent industry analysis, analysis on the willingness to pay depending on what you're saving, cost based, price based. These are all kinds of pricing that you can do. And generally, when you talk to the consumer, since you are giving a B2B SaaS, and you are an early stage startup, the ideal way to do it is give them in bits and pieces. Basically, give them a POC where they can use it for 2 days, 5 days, and have them see the value out of it, right? Which is what PLG is. PLG is that way of selling, that you show them a POC and have them understand the value of it. And then you start charging. And as the market around you matures, then you basically have a better understanding of what the benchmarking is, what the market is trying to do. But of course, as an early entrant, you can also be the person who sets the price. So you will have to read up on pricing strategy. That's a very long-winded answer to what you asked. Okay. Would you recommend the customer journey process offered as a free POC with a commitment from local lock-in LOI, like 1 month on board, full data train, etc., no cost? I would not. I generally would not. Because see, the whole point of B2B SaaS is that generally somebody should be able to use your services over a web browser and be able to tell you whether it's working for them or not. If you go through all that hassle of implementation and it doesn't work, and it can work for multiple different reasons, because let's say the ecosystem is not correct. Let's say the kind of stack you have, they don't have the same kind of stack. And even if you're doing an API call, it's really just not working. There can be server issues or glitches at their end. So a lot of that blame will shift to you. You don't want to do that. You want them to run the POC, say that, hey, we are in, sign the deal, and then start the implementation. Okay. Will B2B implementation team thrive? Yes. Okay. Curious on what a good conversion rate, retention rate. Just looking for the averages are. For my understanding, if I look at Salesforce and all, a good conversion rate would be 60% and a good retention. So retention rate really varies on the market and the competitors and who is offering what price. There is a little bit of price jump in retention. But retention would be around, like, again, 80s, mid 80s would be a good retention. But the thing you have not talked about over here, and we will talk about that, is not only retention, but renewal, right? So retention is one thing, which is I have taken a 5-year subscription and I'll stay with you for 5 years. But vis-a-vis, I've taken a 1-year subscription, but then I've converted to a 4-year subscription. So that is something we will talk about. And there, the conversion rate should be around 30% for you to be a viable business. How do we identify and manage the North Star matrix for B2B products? Okay. Is it decided by the B2B client, or we as PM also have a role to play? So North Star matrix is neither decided by the client nor by the PM. North Star matrix is business. One of the biggest North Star matrices is revenue. Why? Because it does two things. A North Star matrix is supposed to do two things. The same matrix is supposed to tell you whether your business will grow and by how much, whereas it will also give you qualitative data about how your business is running. So there are only few matrices which can do that. Revenue is one of them, because revenue gives you the numbers. It gives you access to numbers. X multiplied by Y will give you revenue. But the increase in revenue also tells you how your business is qualitatively doing. Because if the business is not doing good qualitatively, that revenue will not increase. So North Star matrix is basically determined by the business and by the nature of the business that you're trying to do. So again, if you were, let's say, a loyalty platform, then your North Star matrix would probably be NPS or customer retention. So that's how you determine North Star matrix. All right. We will move on, right? And we will come to the next part of this, which is the way we design a B2B SaaS for enterprise versus SMB. Now, why is this discussion important? Because it has happened in the recent past, and I have observed this myself. So a lot of you will know that Salesforce is now entering into the MSME space in India. Salesforce is trying to sell to MSMEs. Salesforce is one of those very few products which has been very well built. And by Salesforce, I only don't mean the CRM. They have actually built a whole finance stack where you can do payments, where you can do lending, where you can do supply chain finance, you name it, you can do it. Salesforce is one of those very few companies who have gotten the microservice architecture right, which means that every component of Salesforce is so small that you can invoke that component, you can derive the value out of it, and then you can move on. You can even choose to not implement the next component. You can move on to the third component and implement it. This is very unique. This structure is like a lot of companies I know, especially Lentra, Digit, they've all tried to build this structure and failed. And we will come into that, why that has happened. But because Salesforce is so configurable, it works very well for big enterprises, which can, set teams of hundreds to do Salesforce implementation. Or it can work very well for a small SMB where you have only 20, 30 people who can do this. Obviously, you still need an implementation team because Salesforce is its own software. You have to learn that coding language. But yeah, a team of 20, 30 people or even 4 or 5 people, if it's very small and you just want to implement one module of Salesforce, you can do it. However, most softwares, and I'm talking 99% of the other B2B SaaS out there, cannot do this. They can't. Hence, when B2B SaaS is being built, it is built separately for the SMB market and the enterprise market. And again, the reasons for this are a few. One is obviously because if you look at historical B2B SaaS was built for enterprise. It was never built for SMB because SMB is a new focus that has come into focus world over. It's not only India, actually Latin America, US, all of them have a lot of focus now on SMB and how to digitize SMBs and give them the same value and power that an enterprise has. However, enterprise softwares obviously are built for scale. They are built there were softwares, I can't remember the name, but there were softwares which were built where the minimum number of users was 10,000. You cannot expect that in an SMB. It will hardly be 4 or 5 people. So this is the difference. Scale is the difference. And obviously, a lot of decisions then you take, right, about architecture, about coding, about code refactoring, about what servers to use, about how much server capacity. All of that will depend on how many users are actually using it. So the same software cannot be repurposed, or the same B2B SaaS actually cannot be repurposed. Now, configurability and self-serve. Configurability and self-serve is something where we are saying that in SMB it is very important, because if I am an SMB customer, let's say I am buying an inventory management software. What it's supposed to do is it's supposed to take a stock of what is there in my go down, categorize those items, take the price of those items, and show me when something is running low. That's it. That's all I want. So it should be as easy for me to go do either a bulk upload by item number or just add the items one by one, put the prices in. If I have offering any discount, or if there is a sale by date, some goods are perishable, so there are sale by dates. So if there is a sale by date, I put that and my entire thing is updated. That's all I want. Imagine Amazon doing that. If Amazon had a logistics software, or Amazon had an inventory management software, and they do, and it's in-house. But that inventory management software would not work like this, because that scale is very different. But for me, for a small and medium business, why do I care that I need to go through 5 screens, do 70 scans, do this, do that, and then upload the data? I don't care. I want it to be very easy, very flexible, very intuitive. I look at a screen and I know this is what I have. So very important for SMBs to have that kind of user flows and that kind of UI UX experience. For big enterprises, they can afford customer support and integration teams. And again, I am not calling out big enterprises because see, big enterprise B2B SaaS is a scale of its own, and running it is it's a job of it by itself. So it's not easy to run big B2B SaaS either. Flexibility versus control. A lot of bigger companies, I will take the example of banks, they want a lot of authorization and control in how they run their workflows, whereas an SMB would like to keep it flexible, easy, and light. That if I want to jump from step 1 to step 3 without doing step 2, the software at least should allow me to do that. It should not put a blocker in my system. That is what I meant. Ready-made template for configuration. Very, very important. So again, ready-made template for configuration is for a lot of SMBs. Think about it. So I don't know how many of you have used or taken a demo of Khata Book. Khata Book is a very nice software. It's a very nice UI UX. But there, let's say I run a small Kirana store, right? And I want to maintain my entire accounts in Khata Book. I want to understand how UPI payments will work, how I can send reminders to customers who are not paying, or reminder to customers on certain events. Like I'm doing some promotion, and there are good customers who pay on time, and I want to have them to have some discounts. All of this can be managed in the Khata Book software, and the UI is extremely intuitive. Anybody can use it. Similarly, if you take a bigger, you know, finance management software, it will not work like that. Bigger finance management software has a workflow which you have to go through. So hence, building for enterprise business SMB is a little different, and that is what we wanted to sort of touch base upon. We will move on quickly. All right. So what I have talked over here are the matrices, and we will spend some time on this. You will see in the beginning, I have mentioned module wise, because I have taken the assumption that you have built a B2B SaaS which has multiple modules, and your customer might not want to buy all modules. So it should be configurable enough for them to buy one or two modules and not use the other ones. Of course, for certain B2B SaaS, that is not possible. You have to buy the entire software together. And in that case, this will apply to the whole product. In case you are selling module wise, this will apply module wise. There we get a common question as to, in case of module wise, how do you do the aggregation? So aggregation means that if I have 5 modules, then how do I understand what's important to track across modules, but also as a product as a whole? So basically, these are generic components. For any product, I would definitely track these, at least these. And there are around 100 to 150 KPIs that you can track on any B2B SaaS. So we will not go into that. We will basically try to understand what are the things we are looking at from a user perspective: retention, revenue, and tech stability. User acquisition, activation rate, customer acquisition cost, active users. It's as simple as that. Activation rate is number of customers who converted from a POC. Very important to track. And if that number is actually less than 50%, then you're probably selling something that customers either find too expensive or they don't derive enough value from. User activation, feature adoption, one of the key matrices. Onboarding completion. Onboarding completion, the thing you try to tack over here is a TAT. So again, the onboarding generally should be intuitive enough that the user takes 1 to 2 hours to onboard maximum. And for a smaller SMB software, 30 minutes. If it is going anywhere beyond that, then you need to sit with the user and try and understand what he is doing in the system. Maybe you've made the UI UX so complicated or unintuitive that the user is not being able to understand how to move forward. That is a genuine use case, has happened for a lot of softwares. Time to value. This is an important one. A lot of people don't track it. And it's a little qualitative in nature, but it is the amount of time a user takes to realize the full value of the integration, which means that, as I said, since you're selling to a company, what they're trying to do is ultimately save cost, right? Or ultimately scale faster. Like they're saying, I can scale to 10x if I don't have the software because my people will do this work. But if I give this software and I use my people, then I will scale to 100x. But what is the time for that? Now, if the lead time is too high, and a lot of software integrations, implementation teams will tell you have failed because the projects have gone on forever. The implementation itself has taken so much time that people have never realized the value of that implementation. Hence today, and again, this brings us back to the architecture of the system. Systems should be modularized enough so that you can implement them faster, and not only implement them faster, but try getting the value out of them immediately. Retention, churn rate, user engagement, customer lifetime value, NPS score, these are all known matrices, so I'll not go into them in details. Average revenue per user, and at least 30% should be benchmark for cross-sell and upsell, and 50% for renewal. I think this is what somebody was asking, so this is the answer to that. Tech stability. Again, a lot of PMs don't measure it, and I don't know why. Because as digital product managers, this is the first thing you should absolutely be concerned about. Your system should be, the uptime should be 99.999%. Your system should be extremely reliable. Number of tickets per user and fixed time for the same as per SLA defined. Supportability. A lot of companies have a problem with the supportability of the software they buy, including us. We are integrated with B2B SaaS softwares where we don't get response for days. It affects our business. And hence what we do is the first chance we get, we offboard those vendors and we, go on to buy newer products where the support is good. And you wouldn't believe this has happened for some of the biggest names in the industry. I will not take names, but for the biggest names in the industry, they have lost droves of customers because the supportability was not within the SLA defined and it affected the customer's business. So I think we have discussed a lot of important topics here. I'll take any questions if there are any. Meanwhile, I'll also move to the next one. So next, we are going to sort of dive into a market study together, and sort of look at a few of these concepts in real life and real time. But I'll look at the questions first. Okay. How to price for a POC, and once you develop a full-fledged solution, how to change the price perception of the customer? Very good question. Very good question. So when you offer the POC to the customer, you literally have to go in, and we have done this with a price chart where you say that, hey, we are giving you this XYZ. So this is for this much cost. Ideally, even a POC should not be free. Ideally, because we can't drive those kind of negotiations in the market always. But ideally, even a POC should be a very small cost. It should not be a significant cost. It just might be, again, depending on what you're selling, it just might be 99 rupees, 100 rupees. But even a POC should have a cost. You should always prime the customer to pay. Second is that even if you do not have those full-fledged features ready, right? What you need to do is you need to sit with your business and ops teams, drive those feature lists and say that, okay, if I provide this, we are paying this. If I provide this, what is it that we are charging? And on day one, when the POC is being run and you are communicating with the customer, that is the chart you should show them, not only the chart with the POC. Because once you prime the customer for freemium, then they pretty much do not have the willingness to pay. Okay, I think Karthik has another question. Is there a success playbook? Because you study any case study of successful companies, luck plays a vital role along with the obvious PNL. Yeah, I mean, nobody can beat luck. There are companies who have done wonderful business and not gone anywhere because they were not lucky. I don't really think. I mean, there definitely is a success playbook. You can study Amazon, you can study especially AWS and how AWS works. And I think there is a book on it called Working Backwards, the Amazon Way. You can study any book by Marty Kagan, where Marty Kagan talks about empowered teams and how they basically drive value. And he takes a lot of use cases, including Adobe, how Adobe was almost going to be extinct as a traditional software because Mac users were not going to use Adobe or Adobe Flash going forward from a certain point in time. And then they came back from it. How did they do that? So yeah, any book by Marty Kagan, Lenny's podcast, a lot of people talk about bringing the product knowledge or the product lens into actually the sales mechanism. Again, the whole concept of product growth. So yes, possible. All right. I don't think we have anything else currently, so we'll move on. Now, what we are trying to do over here is we are trying to look at a case study of a fintech. And why fintech? Because that is what I really know. If I try to talk about anything else, it would just be silly. So, fintech companies in India are making a year-on-year growth of 31.7% in loan disbursement. I think somebody was asking what areas in fintech are growing. So now this is the problem statement I want you to absorb this a little bit. Generally, we do this as a back and forth, but of course this structure is a little different. So again, if you guys have any suggestions, any questions, any answers, please flood the chat because that is what we will keep on going off of as well. So most physical lenders with non-digital journey, they want to make a switch because they have understood that for scale, digitization is extremely important. You cannot scale via manual channels, manual underwriting, manual platforms beyond a certain point and beyond a certain scale. Basically, you can do 10x, you can do probably if you're lucky, you can do 50. But beyond that is not possible. But now we are looking at platforms which are giving people 100,000 times growth in a span of 1 or 2 years. So a lot of physical lenders want to ride that journey. And by physical lenders, I mean NBFCs. They are not non-traditional lenders, which means that people who are completely off the credit ecosystem, not that. Now, similarly, just like these people are looking at digitization, there are a lot of fintech companies who have figured out the digitization part. Generally, these fintech companies are backed by NBFCs. And here I will just introduce the regulatory framework for 2 minutes. Because RBI in India, a lot of the things that you do for a customer, right, especially in a loan product or in a credit card product, like doing the customer KYC, collecting certain information from them, you are not supposed to do that if you are just a technology service provider, which is what a fintech is. It's a TSP. But if you are a TSP which is backed by an NBFC, which means that you have an NBFC plus a tech arm, then you can do all these things. So a lot of tech companies turned to banking license or to NBFC licenses because they wanted to run these experiments, wanted to get better margins from processing their customers, but they were just not being able to because of the regulatory framework. Now, they are typically looking at CRM systems for conversion. They are looking at loan origination systems to onboard customers. And they're looking at loan management systems because obviously once you onboard the customers and they take a loan or they take a credit card, you have to manage it somehow. Now, what is a loan management? I'll again, for people who don't know, maybe I just give a brief. A loan management system does 2 things. It basically prompts you from time to time to say that, hey, your loan is due, this is due, that is due. This is a payment link, pay on it. And you generally pay in time. Most of the times the payment is automatically taken from your account. Of course, there are chances of bouncing because your account balance is not maintained. In that case, it goes to the collection system, where the collection system, there is a digitized mechanism where they keep on reminding you every 2 days, 3 days, 7 days that, hey, your payment hasn't come through. And if you still haven't paid after 30 days, then they send a field person to track you down and get the payment. So this is what it does. This is the overall system. We will look at verticals of lending to understand what products are being offered to lending NBFCs as digital services. But before we get into this, I want to discuss this a little bit. See, a lot of the times, I see a lot of people struggle with product market fit. Right? In B2B SaaS, product market fit is actually quite easy. All you have to do is you have to draw the value chain of that business or industry. When you draw the value chain, then you have to, and I have done this, I'll show you, of course, it will require some consulting data. But when you draw the value chain against each process or against each bucket in that value chain, what you do is you figure out who are the companies already serving this. And generally, then you figure out 1 or 2 gaps where either there aren't too many companies because there are barriers to entry, there is a tech cost, there is XYZ, or you will find certain pockets which are saturated. But if you look at those companies and try to talk to people in the market, you will understand they're not doing very well because the execution is poor. I think generally that is where the place is to place a B2B SaaS, which is a good, well executed, well thought out product. And again, at the risk of repeating myself, most products who are first entrants in the market don't do well. This is not true of B2B SaaS, this is true of any product. Any new product takes some time for the customer to even understand, execute, do. Only difference between physical products, by physical products, I mean car. So if you buy a Tesla, yes, you will be the first person who bought a Tesla. It will be the first time you bought a Tesla because Tesla is just a car like itself. But if you were the first person who bought a car, I'm not sure. Car industry would have done all that well for the first 100 users. Maybe after the 100th user, they understood what the value is in the car. So that is what I'm trying to get at. With that understanding, we will look into the verticals of lending. Is this visible to everybody, Harleen?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. So what I have shown over here more than the verticals of lending per se is the process, because the process actually gives you the verticals. So what happens? A borrower comes to a channel. Channel is either an aggregator, like Paisabazaar, Amazon, Amazon, Swiggy are not aggregators, but I'll tell you why we have kept them as channel partners. Because a lot of merchants come to Amazon and Swiggy, right? And merchants, we are basically looking at MSME finance right now. So these are small merchants whom we want to target. So a lot of these merchants come on Amazon and Swiggy. They do daily transactions. People buy from them. They pay back the platform, which is either Amazon or Swiggy. They have standing relationships with these. Hence, we have good enough data to understand whether these people are trustworthy. Trustworthy does not always translate to credit worthy. This is the sad story of India. So, but we do understand if they're trustworthy or not. And I'll come to that a little bit in detail. So the borrower comes to the channel, then the channel does 4 or 5 pieces of document collection, generally to identify who you are. Number one, KYC documents. Number two, to understand what your financial situation is. So if you are a business account, then I will need the financial statements of your business account. And I will need the CIBIL score of your business account. Generally in India, it is still driven by personal CIBIL. Business CIBIL is very rare for smaller merchants. For bigger merchants, like bigger companies, obviously there is business CIBIL. So once that happens, then there is a credit evaluation which is done. Now for digital lenders, this credit evaluation is where you have the most bang for buck. I'll tell you why. Because credit evaluation generally has been historically a manual process. Any credit underwriter will take anywhere between half a day to 2 days to underwrite a loan. Good credit underwriters can do up till 20 a day, but it cannot be more than that. And that to 20 straight through cases, by which I mean that there aren't a lot of exceptions in those credit reports. That is what it means. Hence, this is where you use a DS model, because credit evaluation is extremely data driven. All of that data is generally available in the market. Plus, because you have acquired your customers through Amazon, Swiggy, etc., you have extra data, which is POS related data, which you can also feed into the system, and the system can have better predictive ability to tell you this customer's willingness and ability to meet. So the model then determines how much loan you should give the customer and what is the interest rate. The interest rate really depends on how risky the customer is. How risky the customer is also depends on what has been his past payment behavior and what is the capacity he has to repay a loan if you give him. That is what riskiness is. Of course, it also depends on what industry he is in. What kind of pin code does he come from? Does he come from an area where there is a lot of continuous strike, which might be a this thing to his business? So all of that. But that is how it works. So once credit evaluation is done, then we basically tell the borrower that, this is your loan amount. The borrower can try to negotiate. Some negotiation happens, and then they're happy, and we give them the loan. Post that, we do the actual KYC. Now, the actual KYC basically means that we do a digital KYC these days. Almost all of you, if you have taken any loan or credit card, would have gone through the VKYC process. So that's what this is. In loans, when you do MSME business loans or personal loans, it's a little more extensive, but I will not go into the process in detail because that will not add any value over here. Now, once you're done with that, then we do the case approval, and post that there is a loan disbursed. This is done. Till this point number 10 is the loan origination system. This is the job of a loan origination system. Post that, the loan management system and the collection systems take over. Now, if you look at this, what are the verticals you're seeing over here? There are very clear verticals, right? One is the borrower acquisition. Borrower acquisition is CRM. Next, you have the document collection and such and such. Document collection can be DMS, document management system, or it can even be a part of the CRM. Next, you have a credit evaluation, which I said is the vertical itself is credit. That is what they do. Next, you do the customer, you do a little bit more of customer handling, which again is taken care by the CRM. Then you come to KYC and you come to case approval. These are operations verticals where, and again, this can be done through the system. There are LOSs which are capable of doing it. We also are. However, there are certain regulations which come in place where one leg of manual intervention is necessary in order to be able to disburse the loan. So some manual intervention, but generally, again, the system basically does an OCR, checks all the documents against what is available, and gives a match percentage. So it is really easy for the operations person to just accept that document according to the SLA defined. If that match percentage doesn't fulfill, then they will go back to the customer through the CRM and ask for extra documents. That's how it works. Loan disbursal completely automated. Once you do the approval, we basically hit the bank servers and we do a loan disbursal to your bank. Now, if you look at this, right, by looking at this, would you be able to tell me what are the B2B SaaS products that are available for each of these, or for each of these verticals, or for the LOS or LMS as a whole? Any guesses? I'm taking numbers here. No, no guesses so far? Okay. Account aggregator, RegTech SaaS API, yes. Very good. Sangeeta and Devansh have answered. Anybody else? Okay, I think we will move on to the next slide because the next slide has your answers. Sorry. Yeah. This is what it is. Customer acquisition channels, this many. LOS or LMS, this many. Credit underwriting, bureau data pool, bank statement, KYC validation, fraud check, this many. So if I were to tell you where there is a product market fit, if you do this analysis, this is what I was trying to tell you to do. You will understand where the pain point is. The pain point is in number 3, and that is where also the most money has to be made. That is why so many aggregators are trying to solve for this problem. So account aggregators and all are included over here. DGO, bureau, everybody knows these are data pool softwares. LOS, LMS. So in LOS and LMS, if you see, this market is still not saturated, right? It is not saturated because it is difficult to build. These are actually difficult to build. These are complicated products. And even if I do like a top 2 or 3 comparative study, feature-wise, that what are the features this LOS or LMS provide, I can tell you that there is at least a gap of 30 to 40% improvement in each case. So because of that, there is still a gap in the product market fit. So this is where we can build more features, introduce more B2B SaaS, and it will actually be helpful. Digital signing of document and eNACH, we have very few players, but the general problem over here is there is a price competition. So this is just a commoditized service. You can use any and they pretty much all offer the same service, just with the exception of how much money they'll get. Collection platform, again, difficult to build because digital collection, especially in India, has still not taken off. Most of the collection that is done by foot on the street. So collection platform is where we are still seeing DPD0 is doing very well. Klaxona is doing very well. So these are platforms which are doing very well. And collections platform also requires a lot of trust. There is a lot of trust factor involved. Because in collections, the reconciliation happens. Otherwise, if you do not do the reconciliation properly, your customer will say he has paid, but he will not have received the money. And then there is a huge gap in understanding. And the platform itself makes money from how much collection it brings back from the customers. Okay. Now I think we are entering the last leg of this, and I'll try to keep it within time so that we have time for questions and answers. So I want you to help me design a credit module of a LOS platform and onboard a user who's from the credit team. Why do I want to do that? Because this will give us an opportunity to talk through some of the concepts or use cases that we've been talking about. So we'll start over here. And generally, again, I would do this as a back and forth, but we will right now, go through it together. Then we will open up the Q&A for you to ask me more questions about the same or about any other topic. If you see, the very first thing I have done over here is I have done the outcome definition, the output versus outcome. And I always start with outcome definition. Because if you don't do an outcome definition, if you do an output definition, what you end up doing is you end up building a bunch of features. When you do an outcome definition, then you build a solution. Solution is always greater than equal to feature. Solution can be manual. Solution can have manual legs. Solution can be completely digital. Solution can be anything and everything from, hey, I need to go and talk to this person and help them understand why this is valuable to them, to completely hands off, where you say, this is a thing, use it, tell me how it works. So anything can be a solution. Now, of course, I have defined the user for you. Generally, this is a little more trickier to get into. And this is where I think somebody was asking that they have not talked to the user. How do they maintain chart? This is one of the reasons you can't, because without talking to the specific user who is going to onboard himself onto your platform and understanding where he's going wrong or what his pain points are, you will never be able to retain this person. And as I said, till this person believes that your platform is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and we'll use it every day, and we'll talk about it to everybody, and we'll say that, hey, this is actually great, save me so much time, your B2B SaaS is not going to take off. This is the truth. So your credit officer of a bank or NBFC, he generally does manual underwriting of 20 to 50 cases per day. We are taking a senior credit officer. Wants to pass at least 100 cases per day with high confidence of decision taken. Why? The question is why? Why doesn't he want to do 100 cases? Why doesn't he want to do 1,000? He doesn't want to do 1,000 because that is the benchmark that has been given to him by the business team. That, hey, we are doing 20 cases per day. We need to do 100. Nobody has asked the question, why 100, why not 1,000? Or they have and they don't know the answer to it and they are afraid to ask it further. So when you are sitting with your user, you are the person who's supposed to ask that question. It's an uncomfortable question. You have to be a little more diplomatic. But you also have to ask that, sir, why are you looking at only 50 cases or 100 cases per day? I mean, even if we give you this platform, why don't you want to do 1,000? That will give you an understanding of that business, whichever you're trying to sell to, that business's growth. And it will also open avenues of further product feature discussions, which if you bring back and you systemize, as we discussed, then you will probably have backlog to go on for months. Like you will not even have to think about product discovery. Now, expected user actions. The first thing we do, obviously, in anything is study the user actions, because that is what we build for. View all data points related to banking and civil at one place. View decision taking by any data science or underwriting model if plugged. If plugged basically means that there is also a possibility that they don't have a data science model, in which case all the B2B SaaS softwares that I showed you, there are data science models over there. They can buy one and plug it in. And again, when I say buy one and plug it in, it means that your platform should be flexible enough that if there is an external software, it should be able to integrate to that software through the microservices mechanism. And review all observations or flags by the model. So certain times TS models give you a direct output. Certain times they give you flags saying that I can't determine this customer's XYZ because of this data points missing. So in that case, what the credit underwriter does is he picks up the phone, talks to the customer, calls the customer, talks to him, and takes certain data points from the customer or further data points, further than what he has provided in his banking and civil, to say whether this customer is creditworthy or not. So that is what number 4 is. Initiate personal discussion with the customer from his workspace, which is a dashboard. Why from his workspace? Why isn't he calling the customer separately? Any answers? No? Trust. Okay. Trust can be one thing for sure. Because if he calls the customer outside the workspace, you have defeated the purpose. When he talks to the customer within the workspace, whatever that digital telephony is, you have to bring that data back into your system. If it is a call log on my personal phone or even on the office phone, how am I going to tell the regulator that, hey, I actually did the due diligence of calling the customer? Beats the purpose. So that is why you need to call him from the workspace. So there needs to be a digital solution. By from the workspace, I mean there needs to be a digital solution for him to be able to call the customer, get that information from the customer back into the system. And which is number 5, notes from this meeting should be auto-generated and can be corrected and stored, which means that there is a text-to-speech software, which is translating the conversation he's having with the customer. Obviously, it's a bit advanced. Not all systems have this. Worst case scenario, the guy can just type in the responses, but the responses have to be stored into a system. And of course, there has to be an audit proof that the call went in through the system. Right? So this is what he does basically. Now the user expectations. When they are using your system, what is it that they expect? One thing is that the different user actions should be configurable and follow a process flow or workflow. Some things have to happen in sequence, some things can happen in parallel. That's how the business runs. And again, that is why you need to understand business processes very well when you're building a B2B SaaS product. Should be very intuitive for a credit manager to look at major data points and take a yes or no decision. This should ideally take much lesser time than manual underwriting, though through data feeding into Excel models. If not, the user will not come. I think we have made this point clear. Access control should be strictly role-based because a lot of credit underwriters move around cases. By that, I mean that, let's say I am a credit analyst. I have talked to a customer. I have had a personal discussion, but I'm not very sure. I'm still thinking that, is it safe to give this person a loan? What will I do? I'll take it to my manager. That is how it works. So with the system you are building should replicate that workflow where he should just be able to assign it to the manager and the manager should be able to take a call on that. Similarly, there are levels of authority for decision making. Similarly, again, because internal and RBI, there are, auditors who are looking at the system like hawks, who are trying to understand that you are not skimping the processes of underwriting. Because if you do that, the overall collections ecosystem suffers. So then you have to maintain logs of all of your activities. That, hey, first I did this, then I sent it to my manager, then he had a personal discussion. From the personal discussion, these are the notes. From the notes, we derived this and this. And finally, we are saying we gave a loan to the customer or we didn't give a loan. To the extent that there are even exceptional processes. There are, and this is a real life example. So there are banks in India, private banks. If a customer is known to be an OBC, right, then the bank cannot reject his loan without the credit manager's approval. And by credit manager, I'm meaning the HOD of the entire department, not your immediate manager. This is done to show that there is no bias against OBC, which is fair. I mean, that's a fair system. But it's extremely difficult to build a system like that. However, if you do not have that knowledge, or rather, if you do have that knowledge, when you're building your software, you will actually identify the customer demographic upfront, and you will know whether this particular customer will require a redirection workflow or not. And if you build that into the system from day one, imagine your customer's delight. He doesn't even have to think twice. The system will tell him that you have to send this case to your manager. So that is what I meant. Those are very small interventions. But those interventions create a stickiness that will actually have your customer coming back and back again to your system. All NPI data should be masked and financial data should be protected. So these are, again, regulatory systems. So depending on this, if I build a module where I am going to say that, hey, this module will onboard a credit manager into my LOS, plus give the credit manager the rights to perform certain actions, then what are those module features that I'll build? We will basically, and again, when we are going through the features, please remember most of this is MVP. So that gives you the kind of complexity that you have to build into a B2B SaaS product for it to even take off in the market in the first place. The system features workflow configuration, role-based access, data protection and privacy, audit logs and trails, intuitive UI and UX, which helps users select activities to perform based on role, ability to scale. A lot of this discussion has gone on around high growth. Most high growth products fail because they don't think of scale from day zero, not even day one, day zero. The first time you think of a product, think if 5 people use it, this is the use case. 10 people use it, this is the use case. 100 people use it, this is the use case. If 10,000, 1 million people use it, this is the use case. Until and unless you start thinking like that, you will always be trapped in building a product that will later not be able to scale. By that, I don't mean server space. I don't mean you go to AWS and reserve the server space so that you can process 10,000 customers at one go. I don't mean that. I mean the scale and the architecture should be such that if you refactor the architecture, it should be very easily replicatable the more and more you grow your use. That is what I mean. And that architecture is a job of both the PM, which is why you need technical acumen and data-driven decision making, and the job of the EM, who will obviously be who will take the lead in designing that architecture. But if you do not have a proactive discussion with your engineering manager that, hey, this is what I'm thinking about my growth and my scale, then the engineering manager will not have a lead indicator to think that he needs to think like that. He will just think that he needs to design for the problem at hand, which is converting this one user to a credit system. That will not serve your purpose. So, easy generation of reports and robust data access goes without saying. Stability and reliability, 99.99% of the time. Environment features. Easy microservices to call different plugins and also work seamlessly in existing infrastructure. We discussed this. Inbuilt compliance to local regulations, very important. This is where either you build the compliance as a part of the product, if it is a huge part of the product, or you build plugins so that you can call different direct text SaaSes over here for you to be compliant in the journey. That is what you do. Notification on pending or incomplete tasks, very intuitive, but nice to have. If you tell me, is it strictly necessary in an MVP to put notification? Answer is no. But again, the definition of MVP also changes with the market. So let's say this credit underwriter has friends, right, who are using, let's say, Salesforce. And they have seen with their friends that in Salesforce, they get notifications. So this guy in day one will actually tell his manager or CXO, I don't think this is a good software. They don't have notifications. अगर notify नहीं करेंगे तो हमें कैसे पता चलेगा? How will we know? So these are the things where you need to do a little bit of market research, especially if you have competitive products. It's very important to get a demo of that product, because whatever that product has put out in the market, and that is the first mover's advantage, that will become the benchmark for all products to follow, even in their MVP. And that is where the complexity of B2B SaaS keeps increasing. Automated response to frequently raised queries, nice to have, not necessary. Easy bug tracking and continual release fixes, very, 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 very important. Very important. A lot of companies, even today, even if they follow Agile, they are, as Marty Kagan says, doing the Agile theater. They're just playing around Agile. True Agile is when you can release every day. You can release in small increments. Your code is not dependent on anything else. And if you release it, you can quickly experiment and turn it back in case it is. That is what truly Agile is. Now, differentiating factors. I think a lot of you here would have heard about the word called moat. Moat is differentiating factors, or factors that I put into my product in such a way that they interplay with business, operations, and sales, and they make it that much more difficult for the customer to leave. Basically, I make a very happy and a very satisfied customer. And what happens when you are very content? So at the end of the day, let's say you are sitting on your sofa with a cup of tea in hand, you're eating pakoras, you're watching Netflix. Do you want to get up? No. Neither does your customer. If you made your customer that happy that they have become complacent, that they do not want to leave. But for them to be complacent, you should not. You should be continuously at product discovery and continuously at fixing whatever problem they are facing. Now, differentiating features may not be strictly MVP, but will give age to sales, especially in saturated markets. Digitally generated checklist to guide the user through next action steps. Again, how easy, how beautiful. AI conversion of speech to text to record customer calls. Again, all I have to do is read through it and approve it, or say, okay, these things are wrong. And then there is a model in the backend which takes note of it and becomes better next time. Multi-language time currency accounting principles to be supported. This one is not a nice to have. I mean, in a local concept, yes, it is nice to have because we generally follow the same. But if you are trying to build a global software, and again, that is where you have to be very wary of your scale from day one. At least build the structure in place so that if this comes in, you will be able to turn it around quickly. Don't think of it as an afterthought. That is what the point is. So I think that is what I would build as an MVP. Of course, it's a bit excessive. I would like to hear you guys' thoughts on this. And that's all, folks. Any questions? Open for discussions. Okay. How do aspiring entrepreneurs discover opportune domains that have high year-on-year growth? This is a tricky question because until and unless you are from management consulting background where you do a lot of market research by yourself, or you are from a particular domain, which means that either you have run a business or you're part of a business or you have seen somebody run a business, you will by yourself not have the understanding of how this works. So I would say if you are an entrepreneur, best way to do is a get yourself a subscription of some of McKinsey BCG papers, white papers in India, traction, read through them, try and understand how the market is working, but also try to work in a particular domain, or I mean just run a business of your own to just see how it works before you even try to solve for that business. So SaaS is a solution. Okay, B2B SaaS is a solution. The product is always a solution to something. If you don't even understand the problem, how will you provide the solution? So that is where you have to start. Not a good answer, I know, but that's the best I have. Karthik, you asked about tech debt. I am not very sure what the question is. You will have to elaborate for me. I think Devansh has asked a question. Okay. I want to know how you take along the sales team for enhancing the sales figure, sure, and to elevate the customer's experience. Apart from that, how B2B SaaS should keep in mind to lower down the TAT. Okay, sure. So I think, see, for a lot of bigger organizations, especially when we talk enterprise SaaS, right? Sales team is a stand-in for your customer. Sales team is my customer. It's not even a stakeholder. I tell them that you are my customer. Because sales team is the one who has the highest amount of information about the customer other than the customer themselves. So every decision making, especially the strategic decision making, and the strategic decision making comes right at the beginning, because strategic decision making is when you are determining the outcome, right? So we do our work outcome driven. To derive what outcome we want to derive, we first have to understand only two things: customer pain points, which the sales team will give you, the sales team knows. And the second thing is the sales team also has a bit of an understanding of what is happening in the market. Most good salespeople actually know, because they talk to their friends who are also salespeople in different organizations. So if you cultivate your sales team properly, and I think all of us should, they will give you very early indicators of what will or will not work in the market. Of course, you have to validate that with data. Elevate customer experience. Yes, I mean, it's a part of that. How B2B SaaS should keep in mind to lower down the TAT. See, TAT is a matter of process. Okay. So when we say B2B SaaS should keep in mind to lower down the TAT, if the B2B SaaS is replacing a manual process, the TAT will go down by itself. But if you're talking about implementation of B2B SaaS and why that takes a higher turnaround time, then I think that is where the engineering architecture and discussion comes into place. There you have to have a discussion with your engineer and take some very hard calls as a product manager as to what is MVP, why is it necessary, can we do a POC for less than that, can we do an MVP for less than that or more than that. So all of those discussions come into play. And I'm not very sure what you mean by that. If you explain a little bit more, probably I'll be able to answer. Okay, I don't see anything else here. I will go to the chat. Is tech debt not part of MVP? Tech debt is basically a process. Tech debt may or may not be a part of MVP, right? If you define your product in such a way where you say that, hey, there are certain calls we are taking to deliver this product faster, make a lighter product, lighter build. Then there are certain things which will be left, which will eventually become tech debt. But if you say that, hey, I want to do this in parallel, I want to deliver a faster product, but whatever is being left behind, I will keep on allocating 10%, 12% of my bandwidth, sprint on sprint, to ensure that that also goes on in parallel. Then your tech debt will be taken care of. So tech debt, MVP is a product. It's a product build. Tech debt is a process of Agile. So The two are not synonymous. The two are not the same thing. And how you run the process is how you will take care of it. Okay, so somebody has asked a question. Okay, Kumaran has asked a question. Let's say we have a B2B on-prem software and in the market with hundreds of customers and moving to a B2B SaaS or cloud version. Okay, sure. How do you move from on-prem to SaaS cloud and convince the customers? You don't have to. Customers are more than convinced until and unless there is a regulatory challenge. So please be sure, because there are certain GDPR policies and data policies which have come in recent times, plus a lot of regulatory constraint in India as well on financial data, where if you do not, again, I mean, they don't mind you moving to a cloud. They will just, like, you'll have to mask the data a certain way, use certain encryptions. And then when you put it on cloud, there has to be a public cloud, which is, a private cloud, which is available only in certain servers, which in this case is India. Now, if you're moving a B2B on-prem software to a B2B SaaS, and this is exactly the example we took, right? Adobe. Adobe was this. Adobe was a B2B on-prem. On-prem means that you had a disk, you would install it, you would use it. Adobe completely changed the face of the company to B2B SaaS, and the customers were extremely happy. Why? Because when you are giving me a software, I have to buy the entire software. I have to use all modules also. I may not need all modules. Today, if you put me on SaaS, I can go select that, okay, this is the only module. I only want to use Photoshop. I don't need photo editor. So I'll only buy Photoshop. So your end customers will be extremely happy. And when your end customers are happy, the B2B SaaS is also happy. Of course, exceptions are there, like banks, where you will find a little bit of resistance. But here, the question more comes on the process and the people in the process. So that part is a little bit of people management more than product management, though people management is a part of product. So what you have to do is you have to influence the highest influencer, which is generally the CXO, for them to drive it downwards that, hey, we are moving to SaaS. This is a better option. And have a SaaS evangelist sort of in-house who can then drive those transformations. Okay. Okay. Somebody want me to repeat point 4. I'll repeat point 4. Just give me a minute. So we were talking about initiating personal discussion from the customer from a digital medium, because a digital medium is recordable and you have to record the call for RBI to audit you, number one. Number two is, if I put it in a digital medium, the data remains in the system. So if I have a text to speech conversion, then I can actually convert the insights from that call and store it in the system right away, and then use that data later on to drive more and more product discovery or to understand my customer base better. So that is the point I was trying to make. We'll come back to Q&A. I think we are done. Harleen, is there anything I've missed?
No, I don't think so. I think you've addressed all the questions we've gotten in. Great. Thank you so much, Olivia. That was a brilliant session. You've provided some great thought provoking insights, and I'm sure everyone's going away with a lot of insights. And please accept this certificate of appreciation on behalf of the Institute. The QR code on the certificate will take you to a dedicated Hall of Fame page on our website that's been created especially for you. It's been wonderful having you join us and sharing your expertise. Thank you so much, Olivia.
Thank you, Harleen. Thank you to all the participants over here. Thanks for all the support. I was reading your good comments as well. Just didn't want to read them out loud. But what I would want to say is that I am available on LinkedIn. Any of you are looking for any kind of product discussion, please do hit me up. I always look forward to, looking at newer and newer products. And this is my avenue of doing that, because of course I can't go and work in every other company. So I would look forward to learning from you, to learning from your problem statements. and to solve for the same. Thank you so much for joining today. Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you so much, Olivia. Bye.